So hope you enjoy it. Who here's heard about Occupy Wall Street? Pretty much everybody. Okay, cool. So that gives me more time. Occupy Wall Street. That poster you're looking at there was actually made by Adbusters. Believe it or not, the protest that's happening on Wall Street right now was actually started by a bunch of guys in Vancouver, believe it or not. So there's the Occupy Wall Street poster. It actually came out months ago, but you know, I really didn't know what to expect. And it's gotten pretty big, and in fact, it's even spread to the point where there are people now talking about Occupy Vancouver. Have you guys seen this yet? There's a Facebook page. That's a local artist named Carl Chaplin. He's a pretty interesting guy. I don't have time to tell you all about him, but he's interesting. So, you know, I gotta say, at first I was a little bit hesitant. I thought the poster looked cool, but being the kind of, you know, professional activist that I am, I was a little unsure about what to expect from it. And also, I wasn't crazy about the term Occupy. You know, as a person who works a lot with First Nations communities, I didn't think Occupy was a particularly good choice of words. Also, as a person who's kind of an anti-war activist, I also thought Occupy wasn't the best choice of words. So I found this kind of cute poster that takes a different sort of frame. You're all supposed to laugh now at the sort of funny reframing. Thank you very much. You're a very helpful audience. All right, so here's Occupy Wall Street. You know, in fact, today it got huge. A whole bunch of unions got involved and students. There's about 20,000 people, believe it or not, on the streets of New York today as part of this rally, and there's other ones going on all over the place. So that looked kind of cool. But you know, as somebody who's involved in working on issues like this one, the Keystone XL pipeline, you know, it seemed a little undirected and sort of, you know, misguided to me. Like, what is it exactly that these guys are protesting? What is it exactly that they want? So being the sort of snobby professional activist that I am, you know, I thought maybe that it's just not as important as this sort of thing. I don't know if do you guys all know that about 1,000 people got arrested outside of the White House trying to stop a pipeline? Everybody put up their hand who knows about that. This is just me being interactive so I can keep your attention. Thank you, you're all very helpful. All right, so that's the Keystone XL pipeline and the White House. That right there is Jim Hansen, who's one of NASA's top climate scientists, being arrested. Really serious stuff. When you're worried about that sort of thing, it's hard to take this too seriously, right? You know, so here's a whole bunch of people at the Occupy Wall Street march, basically doing what I would say is kind of like a glorified media stunt, talking about Wall Street and bankers being a bunch of, what's that sign say? Money-hungry fascists are dead inside. You know, so it's cute, but I'm not so sure that it's the most effective message, right? I wasn't so sure. Makes for really good photo ops, though. I mean, that's a cool photo, right? You know, and there's a lot of, you know, critiques of Occupy Wall Street on the web. I don't know if you've been following all of them. One of them was just the simple fact that all the people wearing those masks are actually giving money back to Time Warner, a major corporation who's traded on the New York Stock Exchange. You know, so there's some beautiful irony to the fact that a lot of people were wearing these masks. And in fact, I didn't put up the story about it, but they were actually arresting people based on an old rule from like the 19th century that said you couldn't protest wearing a mask in downtown New York. So that was kind of an interesting piece of it. And like I said, there's been a bunch of critiques. Business Insider blog earlier this week went through the list of demands that was eventually created and came up with this whole sort of sophisticated critique of what was wrong with what these guys were suggesting they wanted to see happen. And they highlighted, you know, these rude and sort of incoherent signs that people were waving around. So, you know, is it really important or not? I don't know. It does make for really good editorial cartoons. This is where you're all supposed to laugh again. Thank you very much. As you can see, it says pitchforks have gone up and torches have gone up because of the Occupy Wall Street march. You know, so CNN said it was a disorganized demo. That really pissed off a lot of the people who are involved. Here you see the zombies again, and in the background you see a sign that says, "You see disorganization, we see democracy." I guess democracy's kind of messy. I also thought it was kind of interesting to see a sign that said healthcare with a bunch of zombies walking around. I don't know if that's funny or not. Apparently that's funnier than anything else I've said so far. All right, good. So, yeah, there's the sign I was going to show you about the 19th century law banning masks. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to skip over that. So things got a little bit more serious when people started getting arrested. About 500 people were arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge a couple of days ago. There's actually a class action lawsuit against the police department related to that now, because a lot of people said that they were told they could go on the road and then they were arrested for being on the road as soon as they got on there. And now, like I said, a bunch of unions have gotten involved. The teachers union in particular, which has as many members as the entire BC Teachers Federation, the New York Teachers Association, because there's so many people there, which is great. It's a big step in the right direction in terms of kind of putting some framing and some, you know, meat on the bones of what's actually going on there. This was a bunch of pilots who brought their protest over their contract negotiations to the Occupy Wall Street March. I don't know if you can see the posters they're holding, but they're showing the plane that was emergency landed not far from where the protest is happening, to highlight that pilots play a pretty important role in your health and safety, and therefore, maybe deserve to make a bit more money. For me, what actually made this relevant, or made me sort of take it seriously, was when Van Jones got involved in sort of promoting it. Who here knows who Van Jones is? Less people than before. Okay, if you don't remember anything else I say today, go and figure out who Van Jones is. He started a group called Green for All, which is kind of focused on green jobs for poor people in urban communities in the United States. I think he's one of the more interesting people kind of doing activism right now, and he's looking at the connection between social justice issues and green issues, which I think is pretty cool. So forget everything else I said, just go find Van Jones on the internet and watch him on YouTube or something. Whoops. So, the question is, what are the connections between this and the Arab Spring? There's a lot of people, I'm sure, right now writing theses, statements, papers of all kinds, trying to make the links between what's going on with Occupy Wall Street and these various sort of activist movements that are happening and what's been happening around the world. That's a guy standing on the front of a tank in Syria. Of course, everybody knows what happened in Egypt, which is quite dramatic and pretty substantial. I'm sure it's something that we'll be looking back at historically for a long time. I've got 2 minutes and probably 20 slides, so I'm going to go really fast. There's some more Egypt. Anybody know what that is? It's Wisconsin. Thank you, Ellen. So, the Wisconsin protests, where this was when the collective bargaining rights were being taken away from folks in Wisconsin by their governor. People were looking at ways to make the links between what was going on in Egypt and Wisconsin. Here's kind of a funny one. There was actually folks from Egypt buying pizzas for the Wisconsin protesters. So there was clearly some solidarity going on between folks in Egypt and Wisconsin. So this is what got me to change my mind a little bit. If you go to Rabble today, there was a great piece written on Rabble today, I think, that asked us to sort of look at Occupy Wall Street and to be a little bit more gentle with the protesters. And I don't like to put a bunch of words on the screen, but I couldn't help myself this time because this actually kind of caught my attention. I'll just read the first sentence. It says, "Professional activists, radical Eeyores, and oppression Olympians, I hear your muttering and I call you out." I felt like they were talking to me directly. "Hands off these newer movements for social justice sprouting in the streets of North American cities. Give them some air, let them grow." I think that's a fair statement. You all agree, all right. So you can check out that story, and I'll go through the rest of these quickly. Made me think about Chavez, Cesar Chavez, who once famously said that to convert people, you do it one person at a time. He said organizing happens one person at a time. And I think that's really important to remember. No one protest is going to change the world, of course. It takes that sort of one person at a time approach to really make anything happen. But then again, when you think about somebody like Rosa Parks, of course, she was one person who really made a big difference, but she wasn't alone. Of course, she got arrested for, everybody knows who Rosa Parks is. But you have to see her in the context of these larger movements around civil rights that actually were, what gave her the ability to do what she was doing. She was trained, she was part of a much larger group. If you haven't seen this film called Freedom Riders, it's pretty amazing. You can see a bus that was lit on fire that a bunch of people were riding on anyway, I don't have time to tell you all about it, you'll just have to go figure it out. Eventually the National Guard got involved and protected the Freedom Riders, but it took them really pushing the limits to get to the point where JFK actually acted. So I'll end it with Naomi Klein here being arrested outside the Keystone Pipeline protest, just to say that obviously we're at a moment where there's a lot changing on planet Earth. The world is changing. Her book, The Shock Doctrine, talks about how those moments of change can be used to make things worse, but it's also an opportunity, I think, to make things better. So as there's a lot of change happening in the world, I guess what I've learned from sort of thinking about this is there's this opportunity right now, and it's really up to us to define, what that opportunity really means. So that's it for my time. That's where you